In this chapter of less than 100 words, Lao Tzu will tell us how the world comes into being. From darkness, through mystery, to reality. Lao Tzu says, quote, "The Tao that can be spoken of is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name." End quote. Lao Tzu begins the first paragraph of the book by telling us what he says here is nothing eternal, simply because eternal things can't be spoken of and can't be named. So there is no way to actually communicate those with language. And it seems Lao Tzu is touching on the very nature of language here, its detachment from the real world. When you study something or even think about something, you need it to have a name, and this act of giving something a name is actually an act of creation. It's on some level detached from the real thing. It shrinks the reality into a concept and opens up more possibilities that might have nothing to do with the reality. And while reading the first paragraph of the book, you will notice a degree of self-conflict here. For example, a name that can't be named. And that's right, Lao Tzu does that constantly throughout this book. Perhaps because they understand the limitation that language imposes on us. So by stretching that limitation with self-conflict, he's hoping that we could break through that limitation. As Austrian philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein famously said, "The limit of my language is the limit of my world." When you can't describe something, then it doesn't exist. I think Lao Tzu would agree that the limitation is there, but in the following paragraph, we will see him describe two worlds, one shaped by the language we speak, and the other is not. Lao Tzu says, quote, "Being nameless is the impregnation of all things. Being named is the birth of all things." End quote. A name is a definition and also a limitation. From here, Lao Tzu tells us all creation happens when you don't have a name, but once the creation is complete, names have to be given. The way of creation is in many ways also the way of the world. The world is like an ever-spinning wheel, and it will never stop. There will never be a time when everything is settled, and the world stops changing. So things in the world are always in these two stages of being, almost like in two worlds. A nameless one and a named one. And how do we learn about things in the two different worlds? Are there different methods for each one? In the following paragraph, Lao Tzu will tell you just that. Quote, "If you look at the world from having no desires, what you see is the mystery of the world. If you look at the world from having desires, what you see is the reality of the world." End quote. From here, you could tell the mystery and the reality are equally important to Lao Tzu. He doesn't hold either one higher than the other. And you having desires and letting go of desires are also equally important. They are the tools you can use to know the world. It's important to point out that Lao Tzu, or Taoism in general, doesn't think of desires as an obstacle to overcome. Desires are there. They will always be there. And so are all the emotions when desires are satisfied or denied. So instead of fighting it or chasing it, we would benefit more to just put it in its proper place, or to stay in the middle, as Lao Tzu would say in a later chapter. So what does the mystery and the reality of the world refer to? When we look back at the former paragraph, we will know. The mystery of the world are the things in the nameless stage. The reality of the world are the things in the named stage. Things in the mystery of the world are not born yet, and many of them will never be born. Some of them will eventually be born and by the nature of existence will have names and will become part of the reality. But the reality Lao Tzu talks about is both our inner world and the outer world. Our inner world is actually not within our control, just like the outside world. Emotions come to us when something happens. Ideas come to us when we see or feel something. And we have learned to navigate those naturally. We have ways to deal with our thoughts or feelings or to use them when they come, just like with the outer world. So both our inner world and the outer world can be part of the reality as long as it has a name. And both our inner world and the outer world can be part of the mystery as long as it doesn't have a name. Having desires or not having desires is the key element here. It decides what you will find when looking at the world and starting to think. This is the first advice Lao Tzu gives us in the book. For the things with names or things in your conscious mind, if you want to examine those, know your desires first because they will be part of it. For things without names or things that are not in your conscious mind, if you want to examine those, you need to let go of your desires first. Lao Tzu says, quote, "The mystery and the reality of the world come from the same place, but were given different names. The place where they come from is called darkness, but they are the darkest of all darkness, and they are the gateway to all mysteries." End quote. So in the final note, Lao Tzu says, the place where both the mystery and the reality come from is darkness, and the two themselves are also darkness, like mother, like sons. So they are hidden from you. You need something like a light to help you find them, and they are the way to your understanding of the world. You might have noticed that there is a certain level of metaphor here with this chapter. Darkness is the mother. All the force of creation working inside of her is the mystery of the world. And when she gives birth to a child, it becomes a reality. And by the way, it might be a little far-fetched, but this is strikingly similar to modern-day physics. We need only to change the word darkness to a black hole. Then that's the creation of the universe. The metaphor is so simple, so easy to understand, yet still confusing in all the details. You need to finish the whole book and come back to this metaphor, and then you will know how much is being condensed within these few words.